A very good morning, dear students. Today in this video lecture, we are going to study about the epidemiology of intestinal infections. Earlier in our video lectures, we have already studied about polio and hepatitis. So the main aim of this video lecture is to focus on cholera, acute diarrheal disease, typhoid, dehydration, MBBS, worms infections, and food poisoning. So let's continue with our lecture. So here in this picture, you can see the anatomy of the human body, which shows the positions of liver, stomach, pancreas, intestine, small and large intestine. To the intestinal infections belongs more than 25% of contagious diseases, typhoid fever and parathyroid A and B, Shigella, salmonellosis, cholera, hepatitis A and E, food poisoning, botulism, campylobacteriosis, sclerosis. Now the epidemiology of intestinal infections. Now the sources of infections as typhoid fever, Shigella, parathyroid A, some food poisoning, ill person or bacteriocarrier. At parathyroid B, salmonellosis, botulism, more often animals. Bacteria carrying acute chronic transient, mechanism of transmission, fecal oral, ways of transmission, by the water, food, at botulism, canned meat, mushrooms, as a rule homemade, household things, dirty arms, flies, epidemics, that is contact, water and foodborne. Seasonality, that is summer and autumn. Fecal oral mechanism of transmission. Discharging the agent from the organism with excrement, saliva, vomiting, mass. Second is environment, water, foodstuffs, household articles, and flies. Penetration, the agent into the susceptible organism, that is orally. Now let's talk in detail about the fecal oral mechanism of transmission. The acute intestinal infections are divided on subtypes. Subtype 1, that is typical intestinal infection. The agents stay within gastrointestinal tract, Shigella, cholera, asteriosclerosis. Subtype 2, toxic infections, intensive reproduction, the agent out of organism, that is food poisoning, botulism, staphylococcus toxicosis. Subtype 3, that is typical intestinal infection with the spread the agent beyond the intestine. MBBS, ascaridiasis, echinococcosis. Subtype 4, that is typical intestinal infections with the spreading the agent beyond the intestine. MBBS, ascaridiasis, echinococcosis. Subtype 4, typical intestinal infection with a penetration the agent into blood, additional outlet of the agent in the environment with the urine secretion. Typhoid fever, brucellosis, leptospirosis. Now the division of acute intestinal infection on subtype. First is anthraponosis, the transmission from man to man. Under this come shigellosis, cholera, typhoid fever, and hepatitis. The second one is zoonosis. Under this comes salmonellosis, leptospirosis, and the third one is intensity of epidemic process. Under this comes sporadic morbidity, epidemic, and pandemic. Now this figure shows the mechanism of transmission, realization and intestinal infection. Now the ways of food are milk, vegetables, fruits, meat, fish, etc. And the waterway are water of open pond, wells, water supply system, etc. And the contact, that is household waste, are door handles, switches, household things, towels, dishes, and arms. Through all these matters, the infection can penetrate into the host. Now let's talk about the peculiarity of epidemic process. Now the characters of infective episodes are food, that is usage of food, without thermal handling, flight simultaneity and large scale participation, short incubation period, predominance, the severe form, rapid descent of morbidity after removal of the transmission factor, absence of seasonal prevalence, home, gradual increasing the quantity of patient, slow monotonous course, high morbidity of children, water, acute and chronic, easiness of infection, duration of agent preservation, infection of open reservoir, water supply, valves. Character of episodes is local, sharp increasing of morbidity in 1 to 2 weeks, involvement basically adults, drink not boiled water, removal of the cause leads to quick stopping of the disease. Seasonal prevalence, mainly summer and autumn. Now, the mechanical transmitters of positive agents often are flies. If they have access to sewage and foodstuffs, domestic fly, its eggs, larva, chrysalis. Prophylaxis of acute intestinal infection, guaranteeing of inhabitants with high quality water, sanitary hygiene control, the objects of social nutrition and food marketing, children's establishment, organization of collection and moving of the sewage, maintenance the rules of personal hygiene, detection of sick persons and bacteria carriers, prophylactic medical examination of convalescents, specific prophylaxis, that is vaccine, serum and bacteriophage. The direction of hospitalization at intestinal infection. The epidemiology is belonging the patients to discrete group of population, residents in the hostel, unsatisfactory sanitary hygiene conditions. Clinical, the severity of state, age, that is babies, advanced and old age patients, and the presence of severe concomitant disease. Now, let's talk about typhoid fever. I think we have already discussed regarding this. Now, typhoid fever is an acute disease from the group of intestinal infections characterized by cyclic course, bacteremia, intoxication, rash on the skin, lesion on lymphatic apparatus of the small intestine. Epidemiology of typhoid fever. Sources of infections are ill person or bacteria carrying, that is acute, chronic and transient. Ineffectiveness, last days of incubation period, all period of the disease. Mechanism of transmission is fecal and oral. Ways of transmission are by the water, foodstuff, household things, dirty arms and flies. Now the epidemics are contact, water and foodborne. Susceptibility, index of contagiousness is from 0 to 4. Seasonality is mainly occurs in summer and autumn. And incubation period for typhoid fever is about 7 to 25 days. And it's caused by Salmonella typhi, which has a long flagella-like structure. Now the scheme of infections transmission. The source is patient, carrier of infection, and mechanism of transmission, as we have already discussed, is fecal and oral. Susceptibility is up to 40 to 50%. Water epidemic characterization by sudden beginning. Most of the patients used common water supply, mild form of disease, fast decrease of epidemic after disinfection of water. Food epidemic characterized by acute or gradual beginning after consuming of contaminated food. Most patients fall ill after consuming milk from the same source. Now the most patients are infected after consuming of unboiled milk. Biggest part of sick contingent are children. Severe form of disease are common because microorganisms replicates in milk and create massive infectious dose. Clinical signs of typhoid fever. First week is the beginning is gradual. Compliance is headache, tiredness, sleeplessness, anorexia, constipation or diarrhea. Long fever, that is about 39 to 40 degrees Celsius, and skin color become pale, and the Dungan's angina, we have discussed about this in the class. Bradycardia, dyscrotism of pulse, hypotonia, symptoms of bronchitis, meteorism and positive Padalka symptoms. The types of temperature curve, you can see in this, this is basically based on the shape. If it's of the trapezium shaped, it's trapezoform. If it's in the form of wave, then it's wave-like. And if it's triangular, then we can say it's triangular form. And if we cannot characterize it into any of the figure, then we can say that it's intermittent. Now let's talk about the next disease, that is MBBS. Okay, I'm talking about MBBS in this one. As the slide is not available in this present PowerPoint presentation. So MBBS is basically a common in tropical countries with underdeveloped sanitation. It's most common in the Indian subcontinent, parts of Central and South America, and part of Africa. It's relatively rare in United States. People with a great risk of MBBS include people who have traveled to tropical locations where there is poor sanitation, and immigrants from tropical countries with poor sanitary conditions. People who live in institutions with poor sanitary conditions, such as prisons, men who have people with compromised immune system and other health conditions. Now, causes it's basically caused by Entamoeba histolytica, which is a single cell protozoan that usually enters the human body when the person ingests cysts through food or water. It can also enter the body through direct contact with fecal matter. The cysts are a relatively inactive form of the parasite that can live for several months in the soil or environment where they were deposited in feces. The microscopic cysts are present in soil, fertilizer, or water that's been contaminated with infected feces. Food handlers may transmit the cysts while preparing or handling food. Transmission is also possible during and colonial irrigation. When cysts enter the body, they lodge in the digestive tract. They then release an invasive active form of parasite called trophozoites. The parasites reproduce in digestive tract and migrate to the large intestine. There, they can burrow into intestinal wall or the colon. The causes bloody diarrhea, colitis, and tissue destruction. The infected person can then spread the disease by releasing new cysts into the environment through infected feces. Now that's all for today's video lecture. Thank you, students. I hope you like this video. Please share and subscribe our Doon Valley group channel.